Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane, as always, joined by Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis. Big thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. They've been local and trusted since 1999. If you need a garage, siding, roofing, whatever the case may be, contact Exterior Home Solutions today, and you can do that and get a free estimate by picking up the phone and dialing 865-524-5888, or you can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Big thanks, as always, to our friends Exterior Home Solutions. A lot going on this week. Busy time for Tennessee athletics. Tennessee baseball going back to Omaha in the College World Series for the third time in 4 seasons, 7th time in program history, 3rd time under Tony Vitello. It's a good time on Rocky Top whenever the baseball is concerned, Brent Hubbs. And this past weekend, the series win over Evansville kind of put a stamp on that. And no more games at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. They'll head out to Charles Schwab Field in the College World Series.
Yeah, and the cranes will roll in, the backhoes will roll into Lindsey Nelson Stadium, and we'll see just how far along they get with that construction project this offseason. They've bit off a whole lot. We'll see how much of it they actually get done. And there's a plan in place, as we mentioned in the War Room. They're going to do it in different phases within this phase. But that's a story for another day. The story is this team is going back to Omaha. Hats off to Evansville when you look at what they did. I mean, this is a great reminder to me. I don't know what you guys think, but it's a great reminder. And I know we're phasing out of this, but it's a great reminder of what veterans and older guys can mean this time of year in all sports, right, Rob? You look at the college basketball world. What does an older team mean in March Madness? What did an older team mean to Evansville on this run that they were on that took them to Game 3 of the Super Regional and a chance to go to Omaha?
Yeah, it feels to me. I mean, maybe I've just missed it, or maybe it's team specific. But it feels to me like you're hearing more about that this year on the baseball side of things than in years past, and maybe they're just more teams like Evansville that are constructed that way. But to me, it hasn't really felt like it was as big of a deal on the baseball side as it very obviously is in basketball, and has become kind of in response to the one and dones. But it seems to me that this time around, or this year specifically, you can really see some of those benefits of older guys, of it being a real asset, for having veterans, for having that maturity at this time around in the postseason on the baseball side. And again, maybe that's been borne out in the past, but to me, it seems like it's getting a lot more play and is a lot more real this spring.
Well, and look, you talk about the older guys that Evansville had, that maybe the moment wasn't too big or the stage or the lights weren't too bright. Credit the veteran guys, Eric Kane, on this Tennessee baseball team for the entire weekend, but certainly for Sunday, because it was Christian Moore, veteran, who set a tone. It was Blake Burke, who was terrific at the plate. Not his best day in the field necessarily, but was great at the plate. And then Xander Sechrest, a veteran again, who set the tone. It was Tennessee's veterans that matched and exceeded the veteran play of Evansville on Sunday to turn an elimination game into a coronation celebration, easy breezy evening at Lindsey Nelson Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, that guy right there, Kavaris Tears, he doesn't have as many starts or games under his belt as maybe some of the other guys that you just mentioned, but he's been in this program for 3 years. He's going to be drafted this summer. He's a veteran. Hunter Inslee has had a phenomenal postseason. He's a 2-year starter. He's a 4-year guy in the program. We'll see if he's back next year, but gosh, the way he's playing right now, it feels like he might get a shot, but we'll see. We'll see. But nonetheless, it's Tennessee's veterans that combated the 11 seniors. I think it was 5 true seniors, maybe 6 COVID seniors for Evansville. And Austin, I mean, that lineup, man, I was talking to some buddies before Game 3 the other day, and I'm like, man, like, I don't want to see Evansville anymore. They are pesky. They are good. They are relentless. They don't have a whole lot of pitching, but their top 3 or 4 guys are pretty good in that lineup with Schallenberger and Fergarosi and Chase Hugg and McGinnis, who just killed Tennessee all weekend long. That is a relentless lineup, and but it was Tennessee that had the last punch. And kind of talking about this series going into it last week, it was sure Evansville might get a game because Evansville has proven that it's good enough to get here, but you always got to play another one, and Tennessee's got more depth, and that showed in just a massive way on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, you go back; they've not lost 2 games in a row since the Alabama series, the series they should have won. The last series they lost, I think it's the only series they did lose all year, true series. And this is a team that just they kind of bounce back. They don't get rattled. While 6 or 7 thousand people at Lindsey Nelson may have been a little uneasy when that game started. I don't think Tennessee was ever uneasy. And Xander Sechrist was fantastic. Tennessee should have had a shutout. That the first inning run should have never happened. If Curley doesn't make the error. And I don't know about everybody else. I appreciate the old guys, Rob and Brent. I mean, how do you not appreciate those guys? I mean, they're our old guys, and so should have done that one. They were all on the screen. It would have been better. But at the same time, I mean, when you look at this team, I mean, Eric, all 8 everyday players have a dozen home runs or double-digit home runs. Yeah. I mean, that's wild. I mean, it's this team just continues to hit. And again, I said it a few weeks ago, Eric, I don't know how you feel. I still think this team, is built for the stadium out there. Yeah, they hit some bombs, and out there a few of them might be long outs, but they still hit a lot of doubles and work the corners and do little things. I thought the hitting yesterday by Blake Burke when he just kind of slapped at it and sent it down the third baseline yesterday, that drove in 1 run was fantastic hitting. And I'd like to see them do more of that because teams, they shift Tennessee so much more than Tennessee shifts other teams. Like, I mean, it's almost, what do you say, 7 out of the 9 batters they shift on pretty hard.
Yeah, they're drawing it up, trying to give any type of advantage to slow down Tennessee. And Kavaris Tears beat the shift. Blake Burke goes the other way. I mean, if Blake Burke wanted to bunt down the third base line every time, he could. But I've watched enough pregame to know that bunting is not what Blake Burke wants to do.
But he always squares around. That's my favorite. It's like, I'm just gonna do it for fun.
Well, and I don't think bunting is high on the list of anybody in that batting lineup. That's not they're not big in the small ball, move a guy over and play that type of game. But here's the thing about the veteran things. And Rob, you can jump in here too, along with Eric. Eric, you follow this team, but anybody that's watched this team since Tony Vitello has been here, to me, there's a lot of impressive things that they have done. Okay, you go to 3 of the 4. Who knows if the COVID year hadn't got canceled? Obviously, we know about the Notre Dame deal. That was a great team. I mean, they have been as good as anybody in the country for the last 4 or 5 years. Now, they don't have a natty, I know, but they have been as good. They have been at the top with anybody else in the country for nearly a half decade now. But to me, the most impressive thing about it is the lack of turnover that Tony has in his clubhouse and guys who are willing to wait their turn to play and guys who are willing to share time to play. I mean, you look at Bargo, who comes here from Missouri. Man, where all could he have gone and played every day? But he wanted to be a part of the program. Christian Moore, when it wasn't going great that first year, didn't bail, right? I mean, there's something to be said for that element of the stability of this program that I think gets overlooked by a lot of people because there's a lot of guys in that dugout who could play every day who aren't getting the opportunity to play every day. And clearly they're okay. Clearly they've learned to manage it internally to where it's not an external issue with this team and this program.
I think the perfect example of that, and Tony brings up all the time, it's Trey Lipscomb. Man, he was here for 3 years. He didn't play. That 4th year, 5th year, I can't remember if he was here 5th year, but that last year he was here. He was an All-American. I mean, he turned into a really high draft pick. He's played in the major leagues this season. I mean, Trey Lipscomb is the perfect example of that. And look at Hunter Inslee getting his opportunity last year and then falls over to this year. Look at, obviously, Xander Sechrist. And Xander could have went and entered the transfer portal, and he could have went and pitched for a lot of teams around the country and, maybe cracked an SEC rotation along the way. But in talking with him, he just kind of said, I had a feeling that this year was going to be my year, that I was going to have an opportunity, that I was going to develop. I have faith in myself. And so I have faith in the coaches. And so he stayed. And look at him now. I mean, he did not shy away, Rob, from the biggest moments of the season for Tennessee. Tennessee baseball fans are going to talk about this game and Xander for a long time. Xander pitched him into Omaha. And what would have happened if he would have left? But, yeah, I just think that it just goes back to culture, and Tony Vitello's built along with his staff and these veteran players who continue to teach it and instill it to the younger guys who in turn grow up and they turn it over and they do it as well, that this is the place to be. You come here, you're going to get developed, you're going to get an opportunity to make money, and you're going to win a whole lot of ball games. And guys like Xander Seacrest electing to stay, it pays off for Tennessee.
I loved everything about yesterday's game, not just the outcome, but like I loved watching afterwards, finding out that Xander is the one that pushed to go back out there because he wanted his curtain call.
He also wanted his career high.
I would want that too. I mean, they brought in Kirby for one last go around. Because those guys have been around so long, it's just a nice, kind of send off, nice way to go out for some of these guys that the fans have really grown to love. And, it made the atmosphere, the event, just that had just added that little cherry on top. And who knows, a year from now, that could be Cannon Peebles. I mean, Peebles came here thinking he was going to play. Nobody saw, Stark having the year he's had, and he's been fantastic. And that's another guy. If you could have had given him a kind of a curtain call and taken him out there, it would have been a perfect one because the fans love him as much as anybody. So, I mean, Hubs is right. Like the culture, just the buy-in, the belief from, everybody on this team, it does say a lot. It does say a lot, when you have that continuity. We talk about Hype's, staff. Yeah, he's, lost one or two, and that's going to happen. But how many years did they turn over 5 guys, 6 guys? It's like a revolving door in football. They've not really turned over as much since Heupel's been here. They've had success. Tony's really not turned over anybody. He's had that same core group of coaches, Frank, Elander, even the support staff behind the scenes, even past that, has been really a glue. And I think that it tells and shows with the success.
I know we're trying to go to Rob here for the last 3 minutes, but let me get this in. On that note, I think Tony might have mentioned this back in the fall in a press conference, maybe preseason, but a guy like Cal Stark, I mean, Tennessee went in and got Cannon Peebles last year. You look at that Omaha team last year, and one weakness in the lineup was obviously the catcher. Just wasn't getting anything offensively. Love what he can do. Him and Charlie Taylor both with the staff and behind the plate defensively and all that. But, I mean, hitting $180 for an Omaha team, man, that's tough to look at. And so, obviously, you're trying to improve your team, and that's what Tony was doing. Go out and get Dalton Bargo, who can catch. Go out and get Cannon Peebles, which is one of the biggest transfer portal additions of the offseason. Cannon Peebles comes in, has a great fall. Cannon Peebles hit 3 home runs in the first inning or 2 innings and a half of the Pizza Series begin the year. I mean, he was on fire. And I think Tony mentioned this, whenever they got Cannon, Cal called him and was like, hey, do you want me here? Is there still a spot for me? And Tony's like, yes, absolutely. We want you. We've got to have you. I'm just trying to improve the team. And I mean, you talk about that culture. I mean, Cal Stark literally saying, hey, am I even wanted here? And he comes back. He's the guy. He's having a great offensive year for him. He's great behind the plate. He has 6 pickoffs leading the NCAA. That's got to be some type of record for a catcher. Again, Rob, just goes back to culture, and you're seeing this team go back to Omaha.
Yeah, Eric, those stories like the one that Cal, a lot better than I do, covering them every day. But from the outside looking in, kind of watching them casually, like I get a chance to do in the spring, that player retention in a sport where, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, player movement in baseball has been, the transfer portal's new, but player movement in baseball has been, probably happened at a higher rate on that side for years, and with the advent of the portal, with the ease of player movement for guys to stick around, I'm wildly impressed by that. Just with how easy it is to move in this day and age, and not just how easy, how common, how popular. To have guys that are willing to wait their turn in that sport where, they might be getting, NIL maybe easing things, but you're not talking about many guys that are full scholarship athletes, which makes it even more impressive that they're not looking for, greener pastures, somewhere else or a better deal in a sport where, Eric, there's so much, cobbling together of the roster, who gets what, or, how are you going to split that pie up? Mm-hmm. And for Tony to, have so many kids that are willing to be patient, wait their turn, to me, again, I think that's wildly impressive in that sport in particular.
I think it says a lot about Tony Vitello's transparency. Yep. I think you have that in basketball with Rick Barnes. I think Josh Heupel's doing that in football. And obviously everything's a little bit different in football, but it says a lot about the transparency that Tony Vitello has with his baseball team. I don't think there's a lot of guys in that locker room or that clubhouse wondering where they sit or where they stand with things, because I don't think Tony Vitello shies away. I'm not saying from confrontation, but from maybe hard conversations, difficult, conversations. And as a result, I mean, they are a stability. They are a pillar of stability in a sport that is as transient, Rob, as you mentioned, as any of them out there. And it's pretty impressive. And again, I go back to the fourth inning of this game, and here's bases loaded, right? And Christian Moore's dropped a ball at second. That's a bad ball. Seacrest is kind of stomping around the mound a little bit, and then Christian Moore makes a leaping catch to save a run.
Yep.
And then Xander gets out of them. And then you go to the bottom of the fourth, and that's where the game got away from them on Saturday, right? I mean, if that's a base hit right there, and all of a sudden now that becomes 5-3, Eric, or something like 7-3, whatever, they 7-5, they draw closer there, whatever. You wonder what happens. Then you go to the bottom of the fourth, and that's as good of an at-bat as Christian Moore's had all year that he had in the fourth inning. I think it was 11, 12 pitches. He was 0-2 in the count, battles back to full count, ends up hitting a home run out of it, and then it was game on. That was, to me, that 15 minutes of baseball, of real-time action, 15, 20 minutes, that was Evansville's shot to see if they could stress Tennessee, and Tennessee did not allow it to happen there. And to me, that stretch of 15 minutes was the ball game. That was your Omaha moment, was getting out of the top of the fourth jam, and then what Christian Moore did to break that thing open. I thought it took all the wind out of Evansville's sails at that point.
No, I definitely did, and that crowd for Evansville was great all weekend long. I mean, they came and they were not letting tickets go to waste, and they were chanting and hollering, but they were obviously in the game. It was 12-1, but after that you couldn't hear a peep out of them. And credit Tennessee, and that's what number one overall seeds do. That's what the favorites do. And now that Tennessee has won this Super and is going back to Omaha, and I know that this panel's not an expert on every single team in college baseball, and I mean, I've got to do my research for Tennessee's opponents in the College World Series. But again, Austin, it's kind of like the fans are thinking now, like, it's that why not us? Why not this year? It's been since 1999, the curse of the number one overall seed. Miami was the last team that did it in the first year in 99. Can Tennessee become the second? Can Tennessee become the first since 1999? We'll see. FSU on Friday is going to be a great ball game. FSU is good. Really good. But Austin, as we spoke on last week, man, every team's good. Baseball, as Tony would say, is quirky. Things can happen. You still like the path. You do like the path. And I think Tennessee, people who picked Tennessee to win it all this year shouldn't be having second thoughts, because I think that stretch Brent just referenced just kind of solidifies, hey, we're the number one team in the country for a reason. We're gonna silence you. We're gonna move on, and that's what Tennessee did on Sunday.
Well, what did Tony say after the game?
A lot.
We're well, correct. Correct. But what did he say? He said, we basically take the mantle from Evansville. Like, number one seeds don't win. So now we're the, not supposed to be here, house money, all that. Go play free. The first game's key, obviously. Florida State can rake. They're going to have to, they need Stamos to give them 2 to 3 innings. They don't have to, go to, AJ too early, and because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, like, all year it's been kind of, Stamos, Causey, then Beam goes into,
a Combs or a Snead.
Combs. Yeah. And then, of course, the 2 on Sunday.
Yeah.
But they had to use Combs at the end just to make sure they got that first win. Even though they were up 5, they just wanted to, no doubt, boom. Never saw him the rest of the weekend because the game, was the way it was yesterday. But, like, I think you want to try to get back to that. So, like, to me, you need Stamos to have a really good outing before you go to AJ. And, I just think that ultimately, I think Tennessee being on the opposite side of all those ACC or the SEC teams is good. We tape this on Monday, so I don't know if Georgia or NC State won, but it's either all 4 SEC teams on the other side or 3 out of the 4. Mm-hmm. And you're over there with a bunch of ACC schools, and that's fine. They're good teams. North Carolina's a good team. Virginia's a good team. But I think it helps Tennessee that, people don't have the scout on them. I mean, you play teams and you get too familiar with schools, And, that can be a bad thing. I think it's a good thing Tennessee's on the other side. Will win the ACC bracket over there, and then hopefully you're probably playing an SEC school in the finals.
Yeah, here's what I think of the College World Series. I agree with what you're saying, AP. I totally agree that the lack of familiarity is not a bad thing at all. But anybody who says the brackets opened up, now the bracket opened up in the supers, right? Because Evansville's just didn't have enough depth. Good baseball team, but that would have been a big time disappointment if Tennessee, failed to get out of the super regional against Evansville. I mean, that's a storyline today nobody wants to even think about. But once you get to Omaha, I don't know that anything opens up, because it's just there are 7 other really good teams that have enough pitching, that have enough hitting, that have been through a grind. I mean, this is not the Cinderella, hey, you won your conference tournament out of the blue. Maybe you won your conference tournament out of the blue to get in, but then you had to win a regional. Then you had to win a super regional. I mean, you had to earn your way in a lot different fashion than you have to earn it in other tournaments like March Madness and college basketball. So I just think it's a hellacious tournament. I think it's really, really hard.
I agree, and I would tell you that I would say you're 90% right. The only place that I think that it opened up a little bit is all the major arms got eliminated in the first weekend. And so that's where it opened up kind of for everybody, not just for Tennessee, for everybody. Like, there's no Paul Skeens. Like, you lose
no Hagen Smith,
multiple big time arms. And so, like, you don't have that one player that can alter a team's course, in my opinion. Does that make sense? Like, I think you're right 90%, but that I think it opened for everybody, not just Tennessee, everybody. Some of those major arms.
No, I agree. I agree that. Last year when you saw the draw, if you got LSU, you're like, oh, okay, what you're going to get there. I mean, that's different. I think everybody going out there, based on what you're saying, and I think it's a great point, Austin. I think everybody going to Omaha is going, okay, there's not a dominant guy who can go.
Let's go get this thing.
Who can go a complete game. Most of the teams out there are doing it almost by committee, right? I mean, it's kind of quirky how it is in baseball this year. There's a bunch of great hitters, Eric, but there's not a bunch of guys who you look at a box score and went, he went 8 1/3, right? I mean, he went a complete game, 6-hitter, gave up a run type deal. I mean, it's just not got that this year, which was going to make for a really interesting Omaha deal, because I think managing your pitching out there is going to be it's always key. But it's really going to be unique this year because, LSU is like, okay, Skeens on the mound. We don't have to worry about anybody else today.
Yeah.
We're good, right? We might have to bring the closer in the 9th because the pitch count's a little high because we want to bring him back on 3 days rest. But we're good. How many teams are going out there going, all right, we don't have to worry about anything other than maybe the closer today, versus how many are going, can we get 3 out of somebody, Eric? Can we get to 4 and then turn it over to middle relief? Because it seems like a lot of people are playing it that way this year.
Eric, you may not have the elite arms, but again, we're taping this on Monday. But you could have 3 of the best home run hitters, depending on if Georgia won or not. With Castiglione, Christian Moore. I mean, you got some guys that have put up some massive numbers in terms of home runs this season, all out there in a non-home run friendly park.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm college baseball, I'm thrilled right now. And you guys are exactly right. It's funny, people kept on saying, well, LSU won the LSU went as far as they did and won the series and all that, and they didn't have a bullpen. Well, when you have Paul Skeens that can go 8 1/3 every single Friday, it saves your bullpen an entire game. So, it makes it pretty easy. But there's no Skeens this year. There's no Hagen Smith. He's not in there. Luke Holman of LSU is a really, really good pitcher. LSU's not into this year. I mean, it does open some things up big time. And I know we're 24 minutes here and we got to move on, but I do want to hit on 2 more things. That kind of leads me to this next question. For all you guys watch all the games. Austin's there on the porch, pretty much every game. I've been asked so many times throughout the year. I got asked on Monday morning radio in Nashville, does this team have enough pitching? Are you the pitching depth? Are you pleased enough to say that this team can go win a national championship with what you've had, for what you've seen so far this year from Frank Anderson's staff? The way they've done it. Again, opener on Friday to long relief. You got Drew Beam. You got opener turned starter and Xander Seacrest. You got Snead, all that type of stuff. AP, do you think Tennessee has enough pitching? Have you seen enough?
I have after the SEC tournament. I think that tournament, that showing, coming out of the losers bracket, Dylan Lloyd pitching the way he pitched, Marcus Phillips giving them some quality, outings over the back half of the season when they're up. Tony don't like to put him in there when it's close. But I think all of that lends itself to saying they could handle it if they got, into a pinch in Omaha to go to some of these arms that haven't pitched a ton this year. So probably 2.5 weeks ago, I would have told you no. After the SEC tournament, I think you feel better about it if you're everybody involved.
What do you think, Brent?
Rob, I don't think you ever have enough, right? I mean, I think that's what every coach is saying is you don't have enough. I think to do it, to win, obviously you got to win early in the week to stay in the winner's bracket as much as you can to avoid that. And then somebody, Rob, is going to have to show up and have like we saw in the SEC tournament. Somebody's going to. I mean, can Loy handle that moment? Can some of these other guys handle that moment? Because somebody's going to have to lift you up. That's probably not, in the radar, right? I mean, your core guys have to pitch well, but somebody's going to have to come out of the blue and help you out in one of these deals.
Yeah, to me, I mean, and again, Eric, covers this daily, and I get into it and watch it, hardcore once SEC play starts. So Eric knows a lot more about it than me. But man, this time of year, it seems to me, and this is a Captain Obvious statement, that that the pitching is so important, and it's that like you're just talking about, with the absence of Eskeens that can eat 8 innings in a night and save the bullpen. If you stay alive, once you play your third game in 4 or 5 days, it is so important. The pitching, and the reason I love Tennessee's team so much this year is, and we talked about it last week on the podcast. I mean, by the time this lineup gets that deep in somebody's bullpen, they're just feasting on guys in that third or fourth game. And do they have enough pitching? I don't love the pitching depth, but man, they can just beat people up so bad. I think if Tennessee can, avoid, just a disaster start and losing 2 quick ones, the way they mash is just so much of their advantage when you do get in those situations where guys are have thrown so much, or you're in the third or fourth game and innings are stacking up. Yesterday, or excuse me, Sunday night was obviously an extreme example of that. But I think that's what you saw when they get into the back end of somebody's bullpen. It's just, the Sharks are feasting.
It certainly helps.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, it certainly helps when you have the best offense in the country on your side. And Brent, to your point a moment ago, yeah, the Combs, the Combs, the Sneeds, the Kirbys, they all got a hit in the bullpen. But what gives me confidence is lack of consistency is annoying, but you have seen Andrew Binky, Dylan Loy, and Marcus Phillips all step up at certain points this year and kind of say, hey, this is my moment. I can do this. So, yeah, we'd like to see it happen more than not, but they've all at least shown that they can do it. So, again, that gives me some more confidence.
All right, before we get out the door on baseball, I want everybody's thoughts. Give me your thoughts on the 7-minute Tony Vitello soliloquy, if you will, to open Sunday night's press conference. What'd you guys make of that? Because a lot of people are talking about it. I don't think it's a big deal either way, but what'd you guys make of Tony's? Clearly he had notes. And he clearly had notes when he got to the podium.
I think first and foremost, Austin, what we need to remember here, and I've said this, I think Grant's going to make a T-shirt. Tony Vitello is Italian. He's emotional, okay? He came into that thing guns blazing, and he had a lot on his mind. And he talked for about 7 minutes, and he hit on about 17 different things. He referenced Noah Webster, great Patriot. That was one of the highlights. He slammed the current state of the transfer portal to an extent, not much, but to an extent. He just took a question that was asked to him in Saturday's press conference and just tore a new one here on a Sunday night. He was all over the place, man. But those who follow Tony and have sat through all of his press conferences, it kind of came as no shock. We're sitting there kind of chuckling in the peanut gallery. The moderator over there, I'm going to let him remain nameless. He's laughing while Tony's going on. Xander Seacrest is laughing up on the podium when all this is going on. It was just kind of unique, but here's the basis of it. I think it was a couple of different things. I think that something happened over the weekend in terms of recruiting that frustrated him, and I'll leave it at that. Also, there was a question asked by a TV reporter who covers Evansville on Saturday, essentially saying, hey, Tony, if you guys lose tomorrow, is this season a success or a failure? And the way Tony answered it, I didn't think he really had an issue with it. Blake Burke had an issue with it. And Tony's going to go to bat for his players, the ultimate players coach, and he was fuming over it. He didn't sleep the night before. And you punch your ticket to the College World Series, you beat down a team 12-1, and he was fuming.
Well, I think this, Rob, I mean, had he answered it on Saturday night emotionally, then it changes the narrative about the team a little bit, right? Oh, Tennessee's really feeling the pressure, and it creates this, boy, that, you know, Tennessee's in a vice here. They're really tight, you know, the whole 9 yards. So I actually think his reservation in answering the question on Saturday night was pretty smart by Tony Vitello, because it did not create a storyline about, boy, Tennessee's feeling the pressure heading into Sunday. Everybody was asking and wondering if they were, but Tony didn't feed into that on Saturday night for sure. And then on Sunday, he just went straight Italian on everybody. He just went Tony Vitello on people, Rob.
Yeah, and I'm just, you know, speculating here, but I mean, don't you think some of that's probably informed or motivated by 2022 and you know, how that season ended? Obviously, the question, I think, was probably motivated by 2022.
Sure.
But I think Tony's probably, I guess I'm doing a poor job of expressing, I guess Tony's feelings about that 2022 team are no, you know, hell no, that was a successful season. You know, we had a bad weekend and lost, but that was, you know, in his heart, in his mind, I'm sure he thinks that 2022 team was successful, and, you know, despite, you know, what happened at the end. And I think that probably, you know, and he's at the same token probably thinking, you know, had this team, which accomplished everything it accomplished, you know, with the offensive records, and, you know, had they, you know, lost in a fluky way this weekend, would this season still have been a success? And obviously, you know, he feels like it would have, and I don't argue with him at all on those points.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, coach had, you know, some hard feelings, and I have no problem with, you know, anybody speaking their mind. Doesn't make them right, wrong, whatever. Like, he felt the way he felt. He was passionate about it. I'm all for it. You know, sometimes, you know, and I think we're all guilty of it. Sometimes, you know, the media people will ask a question that, you know, maybe isn't phrased properly or whatever, and players or coaches, you know, take exception to it.
And yeah, let me butt in here. Like, I've certainly asked stupid questions before.
100%,
so
we all have.
I'm not above this, but the way that was phrased, it was really, really bad.
Well, and I wasn't there, but we've all been there in these settings, like when it's a bowl game or tournament, or when it's some media member who the coach has never seen before, who's popping in, covering the visiting team, and fires off, you know, some goofball question like that. It's different than if somebody he sees every day or has seen every day for, you know, 5-6 years ask it. I mean, that's a totally different animal.
100%. Yeah, he kind of hit the full gamut. My favorite part was when, you know, he got really emotional talking about Cal Stark.
Yeah, he did.
Like, real emotion, like not just pissed off, like ready to cry. And so, like, yeah, I think if you went into old Noah's dictionary and you looked up players coach, you go find the picture of Tony Vitello, because I mean, he's a guy that, you know, loves his kids, and, you know, once he found out that, you know, the player or players took exception to that question, you know, it's not surprising that he's going to come back, and especially once they won and, you know, define it out, just like he defined out the player for Evansville and praised him and all that, you know, he did and continues to do, and what he'll look back on many, many years from now.
All right. Before we get a break, Eric, quick transfer portal. Tennessee had some guys in, which is crazy to think you're punching your ticket for Omaha and you've got guys in for visits. Quick thought on the transfer portal. What's Tennessee kind of just a real quick snapshot on things, because I know it's going to stop here for a little bit with the College World Series. Quick snapshot on the portal for Tennessee.
Here taping this Monday afternoon, I would advise everyone just to be patient. Obviously, you've seen on social media Blake Sear, the infielder from Miami. He was in this weekend. He's going to Florida, so he's off the board. Okay. You had Cody Bauger that was scheduled to come in, the Georgetown two-way player, but really that right-handed pitcher. He never made it in town. He committed to Vanderbilt, so those two guys are off the board. Probably, arguably, the biggest name in the transfer portal, Louisville infielder Gavin Keelan. I mean, it's going to be pick of the litter, all right? It's Tennessee's going to be very much in this, but so is about 7 or 8 other SEC teams and some ACC teams. He can go wherever he wants. So he visited Tennessee, think it went really, really well. He's got a very strong relationship with Nate Snead. So watch that one in this one. Nate Snead and him go way back. Nate Snead went to Wichita State, and the other guy I'm going to talk about in a moment is coming from Wichita State, but there's a relationship with Nate Snead and Gavin Keelan. So that one's going to be, you're going to have to be patient and let that one play out, but Tennessee's in that one, but so is everyone else going to be in terms of the interest. And then Tommy Lepore, the Wichita State hurler, they're trying to use Nate Snead as an example, like, hey, lower mid-level, come up here, see what you can be. Obviously, Snead's going to help out with that one. They thought they did a really good job with that one this weekend. I believe he's going to take a couple more visits, so that's never what you want to hear. But as far as Keelan and Lepore, they think they did a great job. There's going to be other names that pop up as the week goes on. But again, Brent, as you mentioned, everybody's focus, number one priority is the College World Series.
All right, so that's enough baseball. We're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, it's going to be Austin Price with the floor. Much like on the carpet, he's not going to filibuster here, but he's going to break down everything recruiting. And Rob and I are going to step back and listen and learn here on the other side of the Volquest.com podcast, presented by our good friends at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
And welcome back to the Volquest podcast. We do thank our friends at Exterior Home Solutions. Give them a call today for your needs, 524-5888. Of course, that's an 865 line there at Exterior Home Solutions, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Recruiting, it never stops unless it's the first couple of weeks for Tennessee. I feel like it has stopped. But we got a little bit of traction this weekend with several recruits that were in town. When you look at players like Josh Petty, I thought Tennessee made up some ground there. If this thing ended today, I think Tennessee would have a real shot. But he's going to take these visits. Ohio State this weekend, then he's going to go to Florida State. That gives Florida State, the team that's always been perceived leader here, the chance to kind of flip the momentum back. But kid grew up a Tennessee fan. Dad's a Tennessee guy. I thought Tennessee did a really good job with the mom this weekend. And so we'll see. Again, you got a couple of weeks here. A couple of visits before he starts really working towards a decision. He hears from David Sanders, would love to play with David wherever he goes. Tennessee's the one common theme there, unless it's Ohio State. And then he talks to George McIntyre as well. So Tennessee's in that one. We'll see if they can continue to kind of find their footing, continue to gain traction and momentum for Josh Petty. Then you have, Jaden Lofton, who is someone that Tennessee's trending hard with. The defensive lineman impressed Tennessee's coaches, showed up, measured in, weighed in. They were really happy with kind of where he's at physically. And Tennessee seems to be, gaining a ton of traction for Jaden Lofton. The rest of the weekend, we'll see what Tennessee ends up electing to do with some of those guys. Brandon Caesar doesn't feel like, that anything's going to go on there right now, but you never know down the line. This coming weekend is massive. As of, this past week, you're looking at 28 to 29 visitors. Now you're flipping this thing back down to, probably, just over 20, by the time it's all said and done, time we get to the weekend, we'll see. Otherwise, the biggest weekend they had a year ago, Hubs, was 15. So if you, let's say you go from 28 to 22, 22 is 7 bigger than you had last year at any point on a weekend. That's a massive amount of kids. And we're talking big time kids. Juan Gaston, Jacoby Ward, David Sanders, George McIntyre, Caleb Cunningham, Jamie French. You can just keep going right down the line. These are a lot of big time guys. Some of them Tennessee trails for, some of them Tennessee's in an excellent spot with. And so you kind of, you hope that melting pot of recruiting kind of helps you. You've really kind of sit back and watched as others have kind of done their thing the first 2 weeks, and now it's go time. The next 2 weekends is going to be a ton of players. You see Dasan Brame. He went to Oklahoma this weekend. Oklahoma's now right there with Oregon and Tennessee for him. Jack Van Dorslayer will also be here as well, the Tennessee tight end commit. So, I mean, Damian Shanklin, Tennessee's going to swing and swing and swing right there to try to see if they can land the big kid from Indiana. They would love to be a major player with, a few of these kids leaving the weekend. So this weekend is going to be big, and we'll see what Tennessee can do. But you got a lot of players here, and so it's going to be interesting to kind of watch how they juggle everybody, because there are a lot of major targets. Not talking about just a few that they're bringing in, they're kind of seeing where things are. These are, if they want in, they've got a spot type guys. And so this weekend will be really interesting to kind of watch how it all transpires.
AP, I got a question, and I understand every situation is different and all that, but typically in high school recruiting, it's kind of like you want to get that last visit, and sometimes in transfer portal recruiting, it's you want to be that first visit. Is it too many these last couple weekends? I mean, is it almost like, man, like if I come to campus, it's like, well, they got 19 other guys here. I mean, I'm not really being made a priority. Is it almost too many, or is it okay?
Yeah, and a few on that list, like Jalen Matthews is not coming in, but Charles House will be here this weekend. It's another one. And then he'll work towards a decision on the 22nd of June. So he'll basically take the week off and then decide a week from Sunday. Eric, to answer your question, I don't know. Again, if you get that melting pot feel and everybody's having a great time, and then, one or two guys tumble in, and then everybody, oh man, I would tell you no, but you just don't know. Like, again, how are they going to juggle this amount of visitors? There's only so many coaches, and so I think that's why, like, people like George McIntyre, yeah, it's his official visit, but he almost has to be an extension of the staff here. Yeah. And I know he wants to be. Like, he is going to be recruiting his tail off for the next several days.
Let me ask you this, Austin and Rob, anybody else can jump in here too. Is the number easier to manage because so many who are going to be here this weekend have been on your campus? I've been on your campus multiple times. Fair. So this is not the one, hey, we got 48 hours, 72 hours to put our best foot forward to give us a chance, versus, you know what, this guy's, he's seen the library. He's done the stadium tour. Yeah, we're going to do a photo shoot because it's legal now to do that. But he's been in the complex, and this, that, and the other. Is that a thing, or is that overreaching?
I think you have to show well. Like, I don't think you can just go, well, he was only here 3 weeks ago, so, we can spend a little more time with this guy instead of that guy. Like, people get, I would tell you, no matter where you're at, whether you're Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Wichita State, when a kid comes on a visit, the last thing you want to do is for him to feel offended, or like he felt like he was just an afterthought or didn't get as much attention as he thought going in. So it's easy to say, yeah, he was just here 3 weeks ago, let's focus on this guy who's not been here as much. But I think, especially with some of these players that Tennessee's deep in it with, they have to, finish this deal. I mean, what have we talked about? Like, it's great. Like, okay, perfect example, Tennessee's baseball team. Had they not won yesterday, they wouldn't have finished the deal. It wouldn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if you've been, the team to beat for 3 or 4 months if you don't close them out. So I think that, yeah, in a perfect world, you would, what you're saying is right, but I think you can't run the risk of, not putting the quality amount of time in with a kid.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to do that. I'm just saying, can you be more melting pot, because
you've already checked off a lot of those boxes?
Some of these guys have been here before and been around people.
It's why George McIntyre, Ethan Utley, these players who are committed that are going to be here this weekend are so pivotal, because you shouldn't have to spend as much time with David Sanders, because David Sanders should be hanging out with George McIntyre, and Ethan Utley should be hanging out with, somebody else, and so on and so forth. So, like, to me, they have to be kind of an extension to kind of help recruit to where it's not as much like, hey, this is where we see you, this is where we want to play you at. Like, there's going to be a few of those, but I think a lot of it is more just a big hangout session.
Right. That's probably
So that's where I'm at with it.
Question for you, AP. I know you put a bunch of notes in the war room on Friday, and things can always change. And there's been a big weekend since then, so I recognize that. But any other additional movements of note in terms of Tennessee was in a good spot here, maybe not so much anymore, or Tennessee was laying in the weeds. Tennessee's a player here because this prospect survived that weekend. Any changes, big time changes from your war room edition on Friday?
Not really. I mean, I don't think we talked about him, but Dontrell Glover's going to be going to Georgia. I mean, they knocked it out of the park with him this past weekend. Now, what that does is it makes Auburn, who was the perceived leader for Dontrell Glover, turn all their attentions to Jacoby Ward, who, again, will be at Tennessee this weekend. And Tennessee covets Jacoby Ward. So I guess, there's some dominoes that start to fall here and there with kids. Jaden Perlotti will be here this weekend. That's one Tennessee has a shot at. The longtime Georgia commits probably not going to end up at Georgia. Would expect him to announce something here in the next, few weeks. And that means that Alabama, Tennessee, and some of these other schools will have a legit shot at him for the Peach State product. And so just little dominoes here and there. Nothing like substantial coming out of the weekend with any of the major targets, but some solid.
Specifically, Josh Petty. How did Tennessee fare with Josh Petty this weekend? A guy that is really close to David Sanders, and obviously Tennessee like them both.
Yeah, as I said, Tennessee did a really nice job there. Did a nice job with the mom, did a nice job with the dad. Tennessee's in it. But again, he's going to take these 2 more visits and then start working towards a decision. So we'll see what he is saying out of the Ohio State visit, and more importantly, the Florida State visit, because I think that will be the telltale sign for Josh Petty. But I think Tennessee left here in a really solid spot leaving the weekend. But 2 more weekends to go, they'll have to survive both.
All right, so big weekend in recruiting for Tennessee. Obviously, the college baseball season continues with the College World Series in Omaha. Rob Lewis, basketball, is there a Rick Barnes diamond in the rough? Is there somebody who's going to magically appear on a campus visit? Is there anything kind of laying in the weeds out there that's a realistic thing, or is it just really quiet right now because everything's settled down in the basketball world?
There's a little bit of rumblings around this kid that got his release from Purdue, a top 50 prospect, Cannon Catchings. We'll see if anything materializes there. I mean, he's at this time of year, he's a guy that a lot of people anybody with room, and there's a lot of people with room are going to try to get on campus. A 2024 guy. So I would keep that one in mind. I mean, Tennessee has reached out there. We'll see if anything materializes as far as a visit. With everything that Tennessee brought in the transfer portal, I'm not sure how attractive they are to a 24 kid who might be looking for immediate playing time. I mean, this kid's a really good prospect. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying he would be scared of competition, but I mean, Tennessee did load up pretty well. So I would say that there are some others out there that are going to be able to sell him, playing time in a more realistic, maybe quicker fashion. But anyway, well, that's a long answer. That's one name to keep in mind. Tennessee's reached out. He's expressed, some interest along the lines. Maybe I'll visit. I'm going to look into it. But that's one name right there. He would not necessarily be a diamond in the rough. He's a pretty high profile guy that just, asked out. But that's one to keep in mind here in June.
And we'll see if anything happens. Coaches are on the road in camps. I know that's the whole landscape of college basketball recruiting is changing. But when are they back out? When could
they'll be back out in July? Be a huge month.
In July. So I guess theoretically you could find a kid maybe who's reclassifying.
That's when they found. July and has been when they found Zakai, when they found Tobey. So I think they would certainly have an eye. For somebody like that, I think.
Or do you think they're comfortable where they are?
I think they're pretty comfortable now. They got Chaz Lanier in the fold, and again, we've talked about it before. I think that's going to be more common to get to this time of year, and have a couple of open scholarships because guys are just, it's so easy to move around. I just think guys are going to be a lot less willing to go somewhere where they know they are going to sit. I'm not saying nobody's going to do it. I just think it's going to be common to have a scholarship or 2 open on your roster.
We'll see what happens with college basketball recruiting in Tennessee, and if anything develops with any visits. Rob will have that covered along with Grant. They'll have all that covered for you. Again, we got full coverage of Tennessee baseball and the College World Series, full coverage of recruiting, and a huge weekend coming up for recruiting, huge 2 weekends coming up in recruiting. Matt and Austin will have all that covered for you, well as camp news, also with kids coming to town, younger kids getting offers. Tennessee offered a couple of kids at camp on Sunday. Full details on that coming up on some younger kids throughout the week as well. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast. Be sure and like and subscribe on YouTube. Be sure and check out our special. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to Volquest. You can see it there. Hit the code UT1. You get $1 for 2 months. And we thank you for being a part of the YouTube family. We want you to be a part of the Volquest family. I promise you, you will not be disappointed with all that's going on at Volquest right now. That's going to do it for this edition of the Tuesday podcast from our friends at Exterior Home Solutions. We thank them, and I thank you for listening. For Eric Kane, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.